guys, Ethan here coming at you with a fun legato video today. This should help give you some starting points for coming up with some really cool vocabulary that's really liquid, travels through the strings quite a bit, and is spicy. It's got some fun extensions, you know, added into it. It's not just let's sweep a minor arpeggio, or like it's not just triad based. So yeah, hopefully this kind of shines a light on some things for you guys. We're going to start on the 5th fret with this first riff. We're going to do this one here. This is going to be giving us a minor 7th for B minor. I'm just arbitrarily picking B minor for this. We're going to hammer into B. We're hammering into that 7th fret, reaching with your pinky out for 9 on the 5th string. You're going to be dropping your middle finger in for 7 on the 4th string. Alright. That gives us the minor 7th again. So far we're like pentatonic, which by the way is a really good way to start with these, because your pentatonic scale for a minor chord is going to have all the stuff you need. It has a root, a third, has a 4th, which you could call like an 11th. It has a 5th and then a 7th, right? So the pentatonic's going to be a lot of the structure here. And I'm going to throw in my 9th here. You can see it's like the 2nd scale degree up an octave. And that's going to be putting me on 6 on the 3rd string. So yeah, sounding really cool. We started pentatonic, and all of a sudden as we're getting further away from the root, we can start to think about adding in extensions, as people would call them. Or in other words, notes from the scale that aren't the root, the 3rd, the 5th, or like the 7th, if, depending on if you consider that an extension. And this is where we can create legato vocabulary that sounds modal. Modal, for me, is like another way of saying contextualize the chord, or contextualize the note that you're surrounding, right? My root is B. The root, the 3rd, and the 5th gives it a little bit of context as being like a B minor, but it doesn't tell me if it's a 1 chord, a 4 chord, or a 5 chord. You know, it doesn't tell me where that B minor chord's positioned relative to like a diatonic scale, a major scale, a minor scale, whatever. So by bringing in more notes from the scale, like a 9th, an 11th, a 13th, or you could think of those as the 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, we're getting more context for where we're positioned within the scale overall. And for me, that's where it starts to sound modal. I go, oh, I know where I'm at, because you know the chord's not being left ambiguous. We're spelling it out more. Yeah, and so the reason that we want to jump those spicy notes far away from the root is because they tend to be close harmonies, and they tend to be like destructive to hearing the chord overall. Like the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, they're really great all bunched up together. But if I try to add in a 4th or a 2nd right in that same spot, and you know, we can't even physically play all those things right here in this little 1 octave on the guitar. But if we could, when we heard a root, a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th all together, it would sound really close and nasty. So we take that 2nd, we take that 4th, and we put them up an octave and away from the root, and all of a sudden there's enough space for the dissonant close harmony to sound actually pretty consonant. So anyways, that's kind of some of the nerdiness on how I pick these notes out. Another aspect of picking out notes for this type of vocabulary that moves so fast is there just are limitations on the guitar, and you have to play to the strengths of the instrument and see what ways of moving are natural. You're never going to just write down on paper, I want these notes in my sweep, and just do it. You know, some of the magic of the way things sound on guitar is that we just have to kind of grapple with what's actually possible and try to work within, you know, that framework. So yeah, the other, you know, way to think of this is about how many notes you want on each string, and try to go for some sort of pattern sometimes. You know, a lot of times 2 notes, 1 note, 2 notes, 1 note sounds really neat. That's a lot of what I was leaning into. And then sometimes when I encounter a limitation, maybe going 1 note, you know, on a couple strings, or maybe doing 3 notes on a string, just as I get pushed around by the scale and what feels natural. So, here we go. Let's go further into it now that we know what we're up to. So we got all the way to your pinky hammering on now on 9 on your 3rd string. That gives us the 4th, which is going to be the 11th. That's technically in the pentatonic scale, but it's another one of these spice notes. We're going to bring your middle finger down to 7 on the 2nd string. That gives us the 5th of B minor, right? So we're stabilizing again. I'm going to grab from the pentatonic box 5 down here, so the 5th fret, and that gives me the 7th of B minor. So far we're sounding really nice. We have a lot of chord tones surrounded by a little bit of spice. When we have something really useful already, you could just stop there, get really good at that, and that's a good place to be already. Before we go any further too, let's talk about the right hand. That's the other difficult aspect of this. As we vary notes per string, sometimes you're going to notice my pick has to park. It's like park, drag, drag, park, drag, drag. You know, it's going to move in its own little rhythm in accordance to how many notes were on each string and how long I had to wait, you know, to pop into that next string. Bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, bum. There's a little bit of a groove going on with that right hand. Alright, and then from here, I started to plot my return trip. Now sometimes I vary the way I come back, depending on if I want to double up certain sequences of strings, or if I'm playing triplets or sixteenths, you know, like 16th triplets or just straight 16ths, which I would recommend, you know, using this in both contexts. But one fun way to return here is to pull off from 9 to 8 to 7 to 5 to come back up with your middle finger and just kind of start to trace our steps. But instead of pulling off down here, I just like to shoot straight to the root, so skipping the 5th fret. And pull off to the 7th there is cool. So we get something like this. So the next thing we can do with that one is you can start to double up some of the things in it. So that's super fun too. I'm not going to go super deep into it, but if you're trying to push this in different directions, that's great. You can also take it and try to like shift positions to other sets of vocabulary that you come up with.